I have disagreements on how things like this are handled, you have my respect. Taking this responsibility and then having a pandemic hit is not easy, and the decisions you make here are unprecedented during the modern era. Out of all the statements made by the parents of Lakeview, one major thing that stood out was repeated over and over was that this isn't political. I laughed when I first heard this because it was the only thing which we agreed on. I too didn't think this was political, but because we're so diametrically opposed in belief, it forced me to inwardly reflect on these issues a bit. I realized something. Of course, this is political. Simply stating that it's not doesn't make that true, and it's disingenuous at best. That goes for both sides of any issue, myself included. As much as I still believe that this is a matter of public safety, there is at least a small part of me that was driven by the competitive nature of this. Me, along with some very vocal members of the Lakeview parents with whom I disagree, looked at the revocation of their mask mandate as a win-lose issue. And that's a problem. And that's why I needed to do some personal inventory on where my stance was on this issue to speak honestly to you about this. I spoke last month about legal cases that defend masks in the light of personal liberty, but I'm not a legal expert, far from it, actually. It was my attempt at a layman's interpretation of the law. I'm not equipped to really understand legal precedents, just as Lakeview parents who erroneously speak of micron counts and CO2 exposure aren't epidemiologists. Just because we're allowed our opinion in a public forum doesn't mean that it warrants equal consideration, and 2 hours on Google does not an expert make. In fact, it comes down to what the real experts agree is the best case forward, as it should be, and how we, with a common interest in the safety of our children, move forward in these uncertain times. As most of you likely know already, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services created a series of recommendations for what moving on from COVID could look like. They outlined a pre-surge, surge, and post-surge routine and how it might operate. Of course, much like most government agencies, they shied away from an official edict and erred on the side of recommendations instead. Everyone's thinking about what post-COVID world might look like, but few are actually offering tangible solutions as to what they can do other than an all-or-nothing account. Imagine if Lakeshore took the lead and drove the conversation forward. What I'd like to ask the school board to consider is how we take these recommendations and implement an easily digestible set of standards that can be doled out on a consistent basis. Other local and national agencies implement something similar for our safety concerns. DHS has the Rainbow Code for threats. Department of the Interior has a color scale for understanding fire danger. I propose we implement something similar to help parents and children understand where we're at school. Something easily digestible for parents, educators, and students ranging from high schoolers to kindergartners. Now, I'm just throwing this out there, but I wanted to share my thoughts for what this might look like. Say we pick a color system that's easy to understand, like a stoplight, green, yellow, red lights to correspond with Michigan Health Department's surge cycle. Green light could mean no masks required, go about your life normally. Yellow light could mean we're seeing a potential surge increase, staff would be required to wear masks. Children would be recommended but not required. Red light could mean a surge is hit, everybody needs to mask up until numbers drop. This could be driven by the reported cases on a weekly basis that are already a part of our routine. Set a benchmark that says anything above X amount of numbers warrants a change to a different light. Right now, with how the numbers are, I'd imagine we'd be at a green light zone. We could then track how the numbers change and make adjustments from week to week to determine if the light color needs to change. If we're honestly doing everything that we can to stop the spread, we should never see a need to go to the red light. For me, I don't think it's enough, and would personally prefer to see something much stricter. However, it's dishonest for me or anyone who says trust the experts only when I agree with them. Cherry-picking data is exactly how these types of issues become politicized, and while I've been guilty of it before, there's no better time to stop than now. I think something akin to the above system, green, yellow, red, or whatever you choose to come up with, could end up being a fair compromise in order to handle a public safety concern that has been needlessly politicized. I understand, unfortunately, that this has to be handled delicately by a governing body that does its best to stay apolitical. Where I think mandate is necessary, I'm not ignorant to where I live, and the likely outcome of how you would have voted should one have been held. But I'm happy to compromise and work together and advocate for the board in its current iteration, knowing the real meaningful change will likely take several election cycles to rectify. With curriculum scrutiny, book banning, so-called critical race theory, and marginalization of LGBTQIA2S+ students taking center stage in meetings like this all over the country. I feel like we have bigger fish to fry while we still have the chance. With that said, it's important that we act now where we're seeing numbers drop. The virus, as far as I understand, continues to mutate in both severity and transmissibility. With talks of new subvariants starting to rear its ugly head, it would be reckless to wait until another surge hits before there's concise and reasonable action. I'll continue to wear my mask, not out of fear, as some suggest, but out of compassion. For those who are too young to get vaccinated,
Your time's.
thank you for your time.
Okay, next, Joseph Old. Is that right? Did I get that?
Yes, that's right.
No, that's correct. And I'm getting there.
I thought you were making fun of me.
No, sir. No, I tell everybody my father gave me something I could live up to, and I'm doing that, so. Good evening. My name is Joe Old. I live at 22347 Martin Road. Came here tonight to kind of fill the board in on what we're doing. We created a charity foundation in my wife's name to try to provide a athletic scholarship here at Lakeshore. The foundation's name is the Beth Uran Old Memorial. Sorry, give me one second. This was a brainchild of a couple of my daughters, that this was something good we could do for her. To give you a little bit of history and a little bit of background of where this all came from, my wife was a graduate of Lakeshore, along with her 5 siblings. Her mother worked for the school system in the administrative office way back then. Apparently the office was where the bus garage is now. And her father was very strong in sports here in St. Clair Shores and at Lakeshore. He was also a member of the Lakeshore School Board. I don't know all the stories. I'm sorry. I don't know all the stories about what he did, but apparently they felt it appropriate when he passed to dedicate the football field to him. So my daughters and I thought this might be a good way that we could give back in their name. We've created the foundation. We're a registered business in the state. We also, as of November, got our 501c3. So we're up and running through some great donations from friends of ours. And after our last fundraiser, which was just a couple of weeks ago, the scholarship for this year is fully funded. And we got a good start into next year. Let's see, what else could I tell you? I want to apologize to the board. First off, I realized about a month ago that we should have been here and done this a long time ago. But trying to get this up and running, we were directed to work through Julie Knight, who handles all the scholarships here apparently. We got with her. She's been terrific, led us through the whole thing. We got rolling, and I'm sorry I didn't, at that point, think to come to the board. I don't know how I missed that, but I thought I'd come in now and bring you up to speed. The Beth Uran Old Memorial will be giving out the John L. Uran Athletic Scholarship, Sportsmanship Scholarship. Our scholarship, a little bit different, a little different twist. When it comes to athletics, we're not looking for the best athlete. We're looking for the best character. My wife was big on that. She always believed that sports built character. She practiced that as she played. She taught that as she coached. And she pretty much insisted on it as she officiated. So that's what we decided to do with it. We're looking for kids that really understand the importance of being part of a team, and that it's not just all about them. It takes the whole team to win. I've gotten together with, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names, with our athletic director, John Hartley. We had sat down and had a meeting. He's been fantastic. He's there to help us any way he can. He's going to set up interviews for us with these kids so we can sit down and talk to them. We did create an application that the school has been handing out. We've gotten some back. We've got 4 back now. I haven't been in to check in a few weeks, but we've gotten 4 back so far. We're going to do interviews with them. We've been to many different sporting events this year, just watching, seeing what we could find out, and we'll go from there. At that point, that's about all I can tell you. If there's any questions or what we're about. Sue? No? Okay. We're hoping to have a real good working relationship with the school and hoping to be around for a long time. So, thank you for.
That would be proud.
And to item number 5, superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'll keep my report brief, as I know we have a couple lengthier reports here this evening with the budget and the mid-year NWA results. So, as I'm sure you've seen, in terms of COVID cases in the district have dropped significantly. Recently, as of over the weekend, MDHS and CDC have removed the requirement for masking on buses, so masks will be optional on our school buses. We continue to test, but we'll move the testing back into the buildings rather than having that central location. Our MAs will be back at their buildings. Just kind of works better with how we operate at this particular point. And you know, we're excited to resume some level of normalcy as we continue to keep an eye on things and obviously receive recommendations from the health department as we move forward. On Wednesday, beginning at 5:30 with a choir performance, and the whole event beginning at 6 p.m. We'll have our district open house. The planning for this event began actually before Christmas. And so we initially planned this as a virtual event, and we're going to continue forward as we've invested a lot of our work and financial resources into this being a virtual event. This is one of those things that, you know, takes a lot of time to prepare, and unfortunately, we would like to hold this in person, but it's not. It's going to be virtual. The link is on our website. And again, that begins 5:30 with a choir performance and 6 p.m. with the rest of the program. We will, however, this spring at each one of our buildings be welcoming families in to see both our facilities and take a look around and get a better feel in person what Lakeshore Public Schools has to offer. Our kindergarten roundup will be held on April the 20th, and that will be in person at the Lakeshore High School Performance Gymnasium, and that'll be similar to how we've conducted that event in previous years. So we're excited to see members of the class of 2035.
Just don't say it.
2035. Wow. Can't wait to see those kids walk across the stage. All right. And then finally, just a quick update on bond activity and the work that we've been doing there. We've met with a number of groups over the past several weeks since the board called for the bond election on May the 3rd. As a reminder, it's a $66.7 million no tax rate increase bond that allows us to do a variety of things, secure and enhance our learning environments, which includes technology upgrades and furniture for all the classrooms, expand outdoor learning and play areas, including playgrounds, courtyards, and athletic fields, improve traffic pickup and drop-off in areas, and secure our front entrances at areas that don't have that same level of secure entrance that you might see at, say, Lakeshore High School. Although they're all secured, they don't have the same level of improvement that the high school underwent back in 2006. Dedicated early childhood center and community center, which would be in this location right here. That would include indoor recreation spaces for both our students and our families, and again, as well as a dedicated early childhood learning space. And again, this is all May 3rd, and information is available at lakeshoreschools.org. There's a survey that's included on the information that's available there, and so far, the survey results have come back very, very positive. They're giving us good feedback on directions that people would recommend in terms of both the early childhood center, furniture upgrades, security enhancements. So it's a great avenue to gather information so that we can give that information directly to our architects and construction managers once we get into that process, once the bond is voted on May the 3rd. Okay? With that, I'll take any questions from the board.
And needed infrastructure.
And much-needed infrastructure improvements. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. We had a couple things that, a heater, rooftop heater at Masonic that went out that we're going to need to take care of in advance. The courtyard at Kennedy Middle School, which we received an initial bid on. As you recall, we have a lot of soil issues here in St. Clair Shores, and it leads to a lot of heaving of our spaces. And one of those spaces we had to secure over at Kennedy Middle School. We got those bids back for a complete renovation that would be a part of the bond, if the bond is successful. But it's cost prohibitive to do out of building and site. So we're going to have it go back out for bid, just dealing with some of the work that needs to be done, masonry work on those walls. They're all secured, they're well anchored, and our engineers have given us assurance that they pose no threat, but how they're secured is obviously not how we're going to keep those walls looking at Kennedy. So, yeah, the infrastructure stuff cannot be understated, even though I understated it.
So the other stuff's important.
That's right, absolutely, absolutely.
Have to have a building.
That's right.
I do have a quick question. I know that Masonic has a dedicated kindergarten playground.
Yes.
Do the other schools have, the other grade schools have a dedicated kindergarten playground?
They do. They're smaller spaces. They do, in short, but it's something that we can expand upon. We firmly believe that play is an essential component, especially at those primary grades, and coming out of COVID, even more so than ever, that kids learn how to play with one another again.
And the first graders, they go to just the kindergartners access that.
Liz, I would have to actually check on that.
Oh, she's not here.
Yes.
Oh, she is in the background.
There, Joan.
Yeah, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Joan.
Joan.
At our school, it's like K through 2, kind of the primary area and then the bigger kids area.
Okay.
Also, some of the schools, I know Rogers has a GSRP, which has an even smaller
Right.
playscape, and we are planning something like that too at Violet, so.
All right.
It varies.
I just was wondering, because I have more experience with Masonic Heights, so I just didn't know with all the schools. So that was just a question.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to item 6A, resolution recognizing Administrators Week. Move to adopt a resolution recognizing Lakeshore Public School administrators for their contributions and efforts to our schools from March 7th to the 11th, 2022.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Densler, supported by Mrs. DeLong.
No, Mrs. Bartle.
Mrs. Bartle, I'm sorry. Shall I read all these? I will. Okay. Dr. Joseph DePonio, Superintendent. Dr. George Lewis, Deputy Superintendent. Rochelle Weincoop, Assistant Superintendent. of Academic and Student Services, Pete Basili, Chief Financial Officer, Lori Farr, Director of Special Education Services, Richard Lerman, Director of the Technology Department, Wayne Satterfield, Director of Maintenance and Operations, Christina Morris, Director of Food Service, Cindy Sam, Director of Student Assistance and Recovery, Dr. Jeff Lip, Director, Special Programming, Principal at North Lake High School, Stephen Gaffigan, Dean of Students, Janelle Bross, Principal of Lakeshore High School, Todd Stevens, Assistant Principal, Lakeshore High School, Will Obolowski, Dean of Students, Lakeshore High School, John Hartley, Athletic Director, Lakeshore High School, Chad Johnson, Kennedy Middle School Principal, Ed Belair, Assistant Principal, Kennedy Middle School, Matthew Baranka, Principal, Masonic Heights Elementary School, Lynn Bradley, Principal of Rogers Elementary School, Joan Grassi, Principal of Violet Elementary School, Rachel Helendi, Accounting Supervisor, Shelley Larson, Accountant, Kelly Biondo, Early Childhood Coordinator, Karen Jones, COVID Liaison, Tasha Candela, Virtual Learning and Digital Media Coordinator, and Shannon Kettle-Hutt, Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and the Board of Education.
Roll call.
Okay. Don't even talk to my wife that much. Okay, moving on to seven.
Roll vote.
I'm sorry, roll call to, I'm sorry.
Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Munger. Aye. Mrs. Thomas August. Aye. Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle. Aye. And Mr. Densler.
Aye. That will go over. If I recognize. Your report.
Thank you. I want to thank all the administrators for all their hard work. Keeps us running very smooth.
Go on the street.
Okay, item 7A, 21-22 mid-year benchmark assessment and recovery report. Mrs. Weincoop. Ms. Weincoop.
Thank you. Oh, look at that, almost perfect timing. Well done as it comes into view. This evening, I am going to provide a couple of updates that are required by state legislation, both the mid-year benchmark assessment and also our ESSER's plan of use for recovery funds. The assessment, benchmark assessment, will be a district-level overview of the assessments, but as of tomorrow, the more detailed building-level detail reports, which include grade level and subgroups, will be posted as part of our transparency reporting on the website. While the data we're going to review tonight is important, as it informs our response to students' learning needs, it is but one measure of success at Lakeshore. We believe that the whole child needs to be supported and prepared, developing students who are agile, adaptive, able to communicate, think and respond critically to our ever-evolving world. The first requirement by the legislature is to establish goals in both reading and math for kindergarten through 8th grade. This is a new requirement that they established last year, and I will update you on what some of the changes are that we're required to do this year. So our goal for reading is that all students K through 8th will demonstrate growth, achievement throughout the school year. Our 1st through 8th grade will demonstrate that as measured on our NWEA MAP growth, and for kindergarten, they will be benchmarked using the DIBELS assessment. For math, our K through 8 students will demonstrate growth in math achievement. 1st through 8th grade, that will be done through the NWEA MAP growth, and kindergarten will be using a prerequisite assessment and then an end-of-year assessment comparison. We're going to start with kindergarten since they're different than everyone else, and when we look at that math prerequisite skills assessment, it shows that just over 76% of our students came into kindergarten with skills that would prepare them to be able to do kindergarten math standards as they're introduced to them. We posted an NWEA score here, but there's nothing to compare it to at this time. In the DIBELS, they started out at a 21.3. We can see that by winter that they had grown. Both of these are below what a pre-COVID standard expectation for grade level will be. But if you remember, our goal is for us to show growth with our students that we currently have and where they're at. We had made the decision prior to pandemic that we don't NWA assess our kindergartners in the fall. It is a computer adaptive test. So to do that within the first couple weeks of school means that we're prioritizing for our students as we bring them in the use of a computer and working through an assessment when they don't even know all their letters yet to be typing on what we need. So we made that decision several years ago that we start benchmarking them in the middle of the year with NWEA, but as you can see with our DIBELS and prerequisite, that does not mean they're not benchmarked. We just don't use NWEA until the middle of their kindergarten year. Continuing with reading, this is again a district level, and this is part of the requirement that's different this year. Last year we were able to just required to report district overall. This year we need to report at building level. It needs to include subgroups. Normally a subgroup is identified as 30 or more students at a building level. One of the things that the requirement identified is that virtual students need to be included regardless of the number. So while virtual students would meet that criteria at the district level, at our elementary level, we don't have enough virtual students in any of our buildings that traditionally they would be included as a subgroup. The reason they're asking us to look this deeply is because there are groups that have been disproportionately impacted by COVID and the learning challenges, and we do see that in our report here. You can see that our economically disadvantaged, our Black students, and our special education students are scoring lower than the general student population.
Rochelle, this is admittedly a very dumb question. What does I'm assuming RIT is the score, right? What does that acronym mean? What does an RIT of 155 signify?
Let me go back. So first of all, I know this sounds horrible. We throw RIT around so much, I don't even remember what it stands for anymore, but I can get you that. It's one, it's. that,
It's Roush unit.
okay.
Yeah. Does anyone know what Roush is?
No. So what these if I get to the next slide, I can show you what they say a student should be at grade level for them. So this, again, the reason why they asked us, this is all grade levels, 1st through 8th, so it's not giving you a good look. The next slide we'll see by grade level and also compare it to what the norms were pre-COVID of what they should come in at. Will that answer your questions more?
Score in isolation doesn't really tell us anything. It's relative to some target or standard.
Correct. And this particular slide is because we're required to look at our subgroups, and so I'm showing you the identified subgroups that show disproportionately scoring below our entire subgroup. Okay, this one might help a little bit more. So if you look on the left-hand side, the first column is the grade level, and then the second column is what our average score for that grade level was. If you look at the chart to the right, that is what the student achievement norms are as determined by NWEA, the company itself. NWEA does have some norming towards M-STEP, so there is a correlation and a projection in those scores. The problem is, as you see our lovely little COVID signal over our data, these are our students who have been impacted at this point by 2 years of different instruction. we are just now seeing a stabilization of students in attendance because of quarantines and because of cases. And so I point that out not as an excuse. Our students are coming to us below what the normed grade level expectation is. If you look here, you can see that grade less than 156 at the beginning of the year is below grade level. We're at 155.4. The higher you go up in grades, and the more time that they should have been in a regular school setting and have not, you see they score even farther behind. That's probably to be expected. This was renormed by NWEA in fall of 2020. So while there was some effort to kind of reestablish what that looks like, that means only 3 months of learning disruption for our students. Our students have now had an additional year and a half, but they have not renormed these to identify that. So we'll continue to focus on growth of our students, but we also have to acknowledge that they're coming to us at a lower level than we've ever had our students and what is expected to be grade level learning. The other thing I wanted to point out is if you look at growth, do you see that growth is higher at first grade? And then we don't see as much growth as they progress. That is not a pandemic result. That is growth data in general. The smaller the kids are, the less time they've had in school, the more quickly they grow when exposed to instruction. The older they get, they've had a lot of exposure, so you will see the growth is more limited, and that's just a normal growth pattern in data. Did I answer your questions by going through this one? Okay. So when we move on to math, you will see that the same 3 subgroups are the ones that are most below what the group average is, and that is our economically disadvantaged, our Black students, and our special education students. When we compare where they were at, we see the same trend that the younger the students, the closer they are to pre-COVID norms, and then the farther up you go, which means more loss of instruction time. I mean, in theory, first graders may have lost a year, right? 8th graders have had 3 years of their schooling impacted at this point. So they are coming in below grade level. We are continuing to see growth, and you continue to see that the growth is greater at the lower levels, and while we continue to have growth, you don't see it in the same percentage increase that you do when they get older. So the important thing about this data is how do we respond to it? We are already required to have multi-tiered systems of support in place. We did not begin NWEA testing because of pandemic. We already do benchmark assessments. We already have professional learning communities in place because we believe it's important to assess data, to evaluate where students are at so that we can respond quickly and the moment to provide the interventions that they need. We have instituted several changes to the MTSS as a result of pandemic. One was to create an MTSS team and take an elementary district level approach instead of a building only approach. We have an MTSS coordinator, a literacy coach, and a math coach in addition to our interventionists that are working in the building. They will ensure that MTSS processes are followed so that they are consistent across the district. They're evaluating formative and summative assessments, making sure that we are progress monitoring, meaning when students are in intervention, we continue to evaluate the data on that intervention and how it's relating back to their classrooms. That data informs students' instruction in their classroom, which is Tier 1, and then Tier 2 and Tier 3, which are different levels of intervention. We also have introduced extended learning offerings before and after school at all levels to support our students who need additional time. So with that, we move on to our American Rescue Plan, the ESSER 3 program description. Most of what we have covered in our response to it, I just want to reiterate, the reporting of these is what has changed. We are always involved in a continuous improvement process that did not begin because of COVID. We are always in continuous improvement. So many of these things that they are legislating we do were already part of our process. The biggest difference is reporting out the specific details that they want to you, and also them giving us additional funds. My hope is that they will also realize that the students who are coming to us are not going to be at pre-COVID grade level, and celebrate and support the growth as we move forward with the students that we have in front of us today. ESSER 3 is required to have input from your community stakeholders and continued feedback on what the priority is for those use of funds. So in developing this plan, we sent surveys out to several different groups and also responded to feedback that we received at meetings such as this, where people expressed what their concerns were. We then took these details, which is how you're required to spend the funds, preventing, preparing for, and responding to coronavirus, promoting equity, looking at disproportional impact on student subgroups, which we already talked about in our data assessment, using evidence-based programs for those students, and then surveys to evaluate what the impact on those students are. So with all of those things in mind, this is the plan that Lakeshore has submitted and been approved by the state of Michigan for the use of our funds. Under mitigation strategies, we're using funds to pay for medical assistance, additional teachers to support small class sizes in early elementary, and I can say while early elementary was our target, you're finding that across the board, K-12, with smaller class sizes in general. Necessary cleaning materials, devices, and disposable masks. When we talk about the impact of loss of instruction, I mentioned the MTSS team. The leader of that is the Director of Student Assistance and Recovery. I just want to now acknowledge Ms. Cindy Sam and the amount of time that she has put in to the data that I'm presenting tonight and the programs that I'll talk about. Our response in being so agile as this year has quickly changed is because of the work that she's putting in this position that allows us to do this. We also pay for a dean of students who's been able to be agile in our unstable times to bring support at different buildings as they were needed for both behavior and emotion. Stipends and instructional materials for our staff for those intervention programs and things happening outside of our contracted school and day. With the remaining funds, we have provided training and resources for staff as they support students who are below what they are used to having them come into their classrooms, and then also retention bonuses to keep the students to staffing consistent so that delivery instruction supports the needs of our students. Another requirement is that we are required to ensure that these funds are spent on interventions and those disproportionately impacted subgroups. As I mentioned before, this process is already a requirement in our continuous improvement. We are required to identify subgroups that are disproportionately underperforming, and you create your programs to identify what causal categories may be keeping them below, and we will continue to use that as we always have to make sure that we are using funds appropriately. This is kind of the exciting part. Now let's see in practice what that means, some of these interventions that have been put in place. We did have a very unstable first half of our year when it comes to attendance for students because of quarantining and cases. One of the things we used the money for was for stipends for our staff who, even though stretched significantly the last couple of years, we're willing to be after-time tutors and mentors and support to our students. So when a student was reported on quarantine for whatever reason, Cindy Sam then contacted that family, asked what support they needed, and immediately assigned one of our staff to be in contact with that student so that they weren't left to just do things on their own virtually, but had a point of contact. At the secondary level, if there were more than one teacher, so that there were several content areas that were willing to take that student, a student might have more than one support person, because I can tell you, as a former English teacher, I'm not helping the calculus student out very much. I'm there for them, right? But I'm not helping them with calculus. Our virtual students, we have put extra support beyond what's required by the state for our weekly contact, again, especially at the elementary level where you see that impact. Our elementary students who are virtual have meetings with a licensed teacher, our licensed teacher, daily. They are involved in Positivity Project. They are continuing to be socially interactive. They provide small group, not necessarily instruction, but support with them. And when you look at those virtual numbers, especially at the elementary, you will see that very concentrated small group is performing very well. And I believe a lot of it's because of those additional supports. To date, as of 2/22, 1,357 students have benefited from at-home support while quarantining, and 83 of our staff members were willing to provide that support. Those numbers are really important, and our staff, again, is stretched beyond what anyone could have thought of. And to do this additional for our students, knowing what they need, just makes me so proud. Our students who are behind academically, we have several plans in place, and we continue to move forward with those, and there will be additional plans. Elementary students who are on individualized reading plans, and just as a reminder, that's part of the third grade reading law, that identifying in kindergarten students that are more than one grade level behind in reading are required to put on an individualized plan. Those students are receiving before and after at school tutoring. Middle and high school students have the opportunity to do an alternative credit recovery during the school year so that they can regain the skills and credit and are not falling so far behind. And then principals have identified additional high-need students who might need additional support or benefit from that, and we have connected with those students and connected them with people as well. So again, to date, in session 1, which was the first half of the year, academic learning recovery opportunities, 84 elementary students, 17 middle school students, and 69 high school students at Lakeshore High School participated. 28 of our elementary staff, 5 of our Kennedy staff, and 10 of our Lakeshore High School staff participated in those programs to support our students in that recovery. 200 of our students have chosen to learn at home this year. So when you see those virtual, again, when I discuss that normally a subgroup is 30 students per building, only the high school would have qualified in the first semester to even include them as a subgroup. You can see an interesting stat here that for second semester, elementary decreased significantly, Northlake decreased significantly, but middle school and high school went up. And when considering that and hearing feedback from our parents, elementary is tough to deliver virtually, and secondary, there was a lot of concern. When people had to make this decision is when we were at a pretty high spike in cases, and almost all of these indicated that it was for that reason that they had shifted to virtual. One of the reasons that I wanted to present our plan is that we want ongoing feedback. So anybody who has reviewed this has additional questions or has things that they want to point out that they think are important as part of our recovery, please send that information to me, either from the board or the community. Appreciate the opportunity to share both our challenges with our students we have, but also to celebrate the hard work that our staff continues to do to meet the needs of those students. That's it.
I wouldn't need that on. Anybody have any questions?
I have a question. The special ed population, they are to take their grade level assessment versus their ability level?
That depends. So special education is, again, this is a district high level. So special education students who are not in a CI program would be required to take those. Some of our CI students take those benchmark assessments, but not all of them do. So thank you for pointing that out. There are a segment of our special ed students who take their own assessments and weren't included in that overall data.
Funds are for another year.
The funds go through 2023, through December of 2023. So this plan covers that time period. We have not had difficulty putting the funds to use.
No, I'm sure this is a county-wide problem, so. What have they done about the third grade to move on to fourth grade?
At this point, last year, they did not provide any relief, even though there was conversation right up until the end. And I have not even heard conversation about it this year, so I anticipate that they will continue to hold students to that standard that was established pre-pandemic. I have some thoughts about that,
I
Kurt.
think we all have some thoughts about that.
Any other questions?
I guess I just want to recognize, one, that, one of the things that I noticed, Rochelle, is that we really already had the systems in place. Now, how we utilize those systems obviously looked very different in a pandemic that we weren't inspecting, but I think it goes to show that Lakeshore as a district and our leaders and teachers and administration and staff are looking for opportunities to help kids who are struggling. And so we put those systems in place to help students that are struggling. So it made us very agile when the struggle of all struggles hit our students. So I just want to recognize the great work that our teams have done in standing that up, and then also just recognize our teachers and support staff and everyone that has fed into then taking those systems that we set up and adapting them and kicking them into high gear for the pandemic. It's a testament to not only the skills and aptitude of our staff and our leadership, but it's a testament to that's not a word. It's a testament to the heart of our staff, that we truly do care about our kids at a whole child level, such that we would build these systems in, not because we have to, but because we want to take care of those kids. And so I just wanted to give that recognition and appreciation, because that really stood out to me in your presentation.
Thank you. Again, our staff is wonderful. The representatives who are here tonight, thank you for all that you do for them. The biggest thing dealing with them is that they still feel the urgency that no matter how our students are coming to us, that they have an obligation to have them performing as they would have when they leave them. And I appreciate that, and they're just always wanting the best for their kids.
Anybody else? Item 8. The consent agenda.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Gensler, supported by Mrs. DeLong. Any comments, questions, corrections? I have a couple. I know you were gone. So DeLong abstained from the vote on item 5 on the special meeting. And it ended at 7:45.
Got it.
May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Thomas August.
Aye.
Mr. Densler.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
And Mr. Colling.
Aye.
Thank you. 8B, Personnel Report, Dr. George Lewis.
Recommend that the board approve the following personnel report, non-unit, accept the employment of Taylor Brosnan, media assistant, Rogers Elementary, effective February 17th. She's placed at ASC 3, Step 3. AFSCME Local 1217, accept the resignation of Jennifer Pasco, kitchen helper, Rogers Elementary, effective February 10th, 2022. Ginger Watson, kitchen helper, Rogers Elementary, effective February 11th, 2022. Lakeshore Federation of Support Staff, Local 4793, accept the employment of Marcus Cribbs, Campus Monitor, Lakeshore High School, effective February 28th, 2022, Class C, Step 3. Jessica Harrison, Lunchroom Monitor, Violet, effective January 5th, 2022, Class A, Step 3. John Johnston, Lunchroom Monitor, Violet Elementary, effective February 4th, 2022, Class A, Step 3. Deborah Wallen Krumholtz, Lunchroom Monitor at Rogers, effective February 4th, 2022, Class A, Step 3. Robert Kubiak, Campus Monitor, Kennedy Middle School, effective January 24th, Class C, Step 3. Also ask that you accept the resignation of Stephanie Radzinski, Lunchroom Monitor at Violet, effective January 4th. Lakeshore Federation of Teachers, Local 1465, move to accept the employment of Megan Girolando, Speech and Language Pathologist at Violet Elementary, effective February 14th, 2022, MA Step 6.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mrs. DeLon, supported by Mrs. Bartle. Any questions? Or Dr. Lewis? Do we have any staff here we can welcome to the Lakeshore family?
I do not believe we have any of our staff here this evening.
Okay. We will move on to 8. Yes, roll call, please.
Mrs. DeLong?
Aye.
Mr. Colling? Aye. Mrs. Munger?
trying to hurry
Aye.
for you.
Mrs. Bartle?
Aye.
Mr. Densler?
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler?
Aye.
And Mrs. Thomas August?
Aye.
Okay, moving on now to 8C, budget amendment, Pete Basili.
Okay, so we have our February budget amendment. Before we get started, I want to give you some good news. So tomorrow's March 1st, and it's 31 days to opening day, so there's good news in the world. Now onto my budget. So this is the February budget amendment. The June amendment will be next. We amended all 13 district funds. This is a budget-to-budget comparison, so we're not doing budget to actual. That's going to be done in the fall when Plant Moran issues their report. What we're doing is updating our budget from the adoption in June 29th of 2021. We had assumptions and data we didn't have at the time. We have updated assumptions and data here to update our budget. The February amendment is usually more relevant for revenues versus expenditures, because by now we usually have state aid locked in, or student count, or foundation allowance. However, this is more of an anomaly of a year, as the last couple of years have been because of the pandemic. There's all talk about May supplemental bill for state aid. There's federal, state programs coming through, new grants coming through. It seems like every other week. We're up to about 20 grants now. So there could be some big changes between now and June, but revenues are going to be a little more locked in than expenditures, which we bring down toward the end of the year. So from a big picture standpoint, if we want to see where we were back in June 29th when we adopted the budget, we were assuming a net loss of $315,000. And that was back in June, before the state gave us their budget and their foundation allowance, and the big thing before we got our student count. So back then, we were assuming that our student count would stay the same as it had the previous year. And to go back a couple of years, after the pandemic, like pretty much every district in the state of Michigan, we lost students. We lost 260 students last year. However, because of the one-time super blend safe harbor provision the state provided us, we only had to recognize 25% of that loss. So instead of recognizing 260 students now, we only recognize 65 students. So we really were able to modify our loss. This year, we did not get that extra provision extended as we had hoped. And the assumption we did back in June was that we wouldn't have a change in student count. We were hoping to get some of those students back. Also included in that were the 75 international program students. As it turned out, we really stayed the exact same as we had when we were down 260. So we had to recognize the other 75%, or 195 students down. So we had to recognize that loss this year. So if you take 195 students times our foundation allowance, that equates to about 1.6 million. So if you go down here and see what our change is from where we were back in June, we see we have decreased our financial position by about $1 million. That is due to the student loss recognition that we had this year. Now, we had a couple of factors modify that loss. We had a little bit of an increase in our foundation allowance of $71. So that makes up about $225,000. We also got an extra 20% allocation on MEPSR's cost reimbursement for another $500,000. So when we offset those two with the $1.6 million, it comes out to about $900,000. So from a big picture standpoint, we went from 315 net loss to 1.296 million net loss, a change of $1 million due to the recognition of the student loss. In terms of individual variances among the line items, to go through that, so our local source revenue, which is mainly property taxes, is down 1.5 million, but that's just due to an accounting reclassification with interdistrict sources, which went up $1.5 million. Our enhancement millage, which is $1.5 million, had to be reclassified since it flowed through the Macomb Intermediate School District versus going directly to us. State source revenue actually increased $93,000, and that's a little bit deceiving because, as I said, we got the big student loss of $1.6 million, offset somewhat by the MEPSRs and the foundation allowance, but we had all these new state grants or increases in state grants. Now, state grants and federal grants are a little tricky because they're basically gross ups. So you recognize revenue, but you also have to recognize the expense. So the net effect in fund balance is zero, but they do gross up your revenues and expenditures. So in this category here, we had an extra allocation for 31A at-risk funding. We had a big carryover from the previous year because we couldn't utilize all the money because of the shutdowns. We also had a pretty big increase in the GSRP revenues of $267,000. We had some classrooms and teachers. We had a new state grant for literacy coaches and some big carryovers for our early literacy programs. So in total, the net effect is an increase of $93,000, even though many of those grants are going through expenditures also. So it's a kind of an in and out gross up. We go to federal sources, that obviously jacked up quite a bit to $2.6 million. Big thing there at ESSERS 3, we got $1.7 million of extra ESSERS 3 funding. This year we had some extra ESSERS 2 funding. We also had funding at the federal level for summer learning recovery programs for credit recovery. We also had a Child Care Relief Fund grant that came on, so a lot of new grants came in on the federal side, which again, but flow through the expenditure side, so you'll see at the bottom, you'll see some inflated numbers there also. Kind of a feel-good story here for interfund transfers. We were able to increase that $130,000. Our adult ed fund was doing very well. We had about a $500,000 fund balance in that at the end of last year. Continues to have a solid fund balance. So we're able to transfer an extra $100,000 this year to the general fund to reimburse for central office costs and indirect costs. So if you recall in previous years, the adult ed fund was actually being subsidized by the general fund, so now it's going the other way around. So that's a good story in terms of it's self-sufficient and it's subsidizing for our central office costs. We also had an increase in our cafeteria fund transfer of another $30,000. That's an even better feel-good story, thank you, that we have been able to increase. We were really concerned during the pandemic because the a la carte sales, catering revenue was going to crater because of the shutdowns. But the federal government stepped up and increased their federal meal reimbursement rate pretty significantly to more than make up for it. So as you'll see in your other slide with the school service fund, that fund balance is now at an all-time high of 32% or $450,000. So we increased our transfer to the max of $80,000. That's we can't go above that. That's MDE regulated based on a calculation and on the indirect cost rate. So in a nutshell, total revenues increased $2.7 million, again, mostly due to the gross ups that we had with our federal and state programs. So if we go to the expenditure side, we see basic programs, which is our teacher salaries, benefits, classroom textbooks, supplies, and so forth. That went up $1.7 million, again, mostly due to new ESSER spending. For example, we had $527,000 in one-time teacher retention bonuses that we paid out in December through ESSERS 3. We had the summer learning stipends for $437,000, the credit recovery, GSRP. We also had an extra $200,000 in elementary direct subs that we had because of staff shortages that we had to add on to our expenditures. But we're working with HR to kind of transition those people to EDGE staff and reduce those costs. But those are the main drivers, ESSERS 3, ESSERS 2 money, and some direct subs that we had to expend on. Added needs went up about $218,000. That's your special education cost. We added a MySci classroom at Violet for that. We also had an increase in our pupil expenditures of $218,000. Those are just pay increases for 5 certified medical assistants and some counts for extra pays, again, paid through ESSERS monies.
And then we had an increase of $931,000 in our instructional staff category. $486,000 of that was to provide virtual learning software options for our students who want it to be taught at home versus in class. And we also had the summer learning recovery stipends. We also had some PD amounts in there. Most of that, again, if not all of it's ESSER's monies. So as you see how it gets grossed up, it's pretty significant. The last big change in expenditures is our operation maintenance, which increased by $319,000, basically due to kind of the startup costs that we've had. Last couple of years, we've been partially shut down or mostly shut down. We're able to save a lot of money in that area, but this is kind of the cost of starting up to full capacity. And what do we do here? Boilers were very expensive. We had several of those go. We had some heating and cooling system repairs, maintenance supplies, and so forth. So that went up, and that kind of underscores the critical need to have a bond pass, so we could put ease the strain on the general fund. So in total, if we go back down here in terms of what our fund balance is projected to be, we're looking at 8.4% compared to 12.5%. Now, what's a little bit deceiving here is the 8.4% is probably a little bit understated because, as I just said, we grossed up revenues and expenditures, so the denominator in the equation is much higher, meaning that number is artificially low. If you were to take the $3.6 million fund balance projected and compare it to last year's expenditures of $40,037,000, we'd be at a fund balance of about 9%. That's what I think we should probably compare it to. So it's still, it's not quite double digits, but in light of all that we've been through with the student losses and the employee compensation increases, it's good overall in terms of where we need to be at this point. One item of note, too, is that in the last, actually since 2014-15, I did my little research, we've lost 584 students, or 15% of our student population. So if you take the 584 times the foundation allowance, it's a loss of about $5 million annually. Now, we have had foundation allowance increases about $667, but that only equates to $2.2 million. So we've got a deficit of $2.8 million we've been working with on an annual basis. So it kind of underscores the challenges that we've had in terms of increasing employee compensation, benefits, and cost, and we've been able to maintain this at last year 12.5%, this year probably closer to 9%. So we've definitely steered out of some bad weather here, but obviously moving forward, we'll continue to have to make the challenges, especially once the federal and state money runs out. We'll definitely, if we don't get our student count back, we'll definitely have to continue our goal of right sizing and continue to be efficient with our expenditures. So that's in a nutshell. Welcome any questions or.
Can I get a motion first?
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Denzler, supported by Mrs. DeLong. Are there any questions for Pete?
And thank you for staring at me, Kurt, but no,
No.
I'm good. You just talked at us for 25 minutes.
Was that wrong? It seemed like it was.
I thought for the startup, we were supposed to get money from the government for that, for the startup after this COVID.
Well, we did all get all the grants. I mean, that's what's ESSER's 3, ESSER's 2, and we did some supplanting too to help out, or that fund balance would be lower.
Okay. And we did put out a lot of meals, Tina, to help the community. Thank you. Very, very good job. And we are going to we have a plan to build up the general fund.
We're going to continue to address things as they come along, and student count is obviously going to be a big part of that.
Yeah.
And making sure that that employee compensation, as well as making sure that our staffing levels are appropriate, so that we can continue to move things forward.
Okay. Do we anticipate the use of Taylor in the near future for our international programs, or Germany, Spain?
I wouldn't anticipate any time in the near future that our international program come back as it did. I think just the uncertainty that we're in right now makes it something that's not very feasible to spend a lot of time and energy preparing for something that likely will not occur. However, we'll continue to look at ways to increase revenue. Constantly evaluating what we can do to add students, but You know, I think the most important thing is if we focus on creating the very best learning opportunity that we can, and that is the ultimate objective, students will ultimately arrive at Lakeshore Public Schools. Now, the challenge is there's just less kids
Right.
in Michigan. School-age kids have declined significantly, and if you've seen, throughout news reports, this decline in enrollment is not something that's unique to Lakeshore. It's an issue with the state of Michigan in general. But COVID certainly exacerbated that issue, and we see a lot of people that left public education. We were hopeful that those that left Lakeshore would come back. Some chose to, some did not. But I think if we continue with this goal of making our learning experience the best that it can possibly be, that will be the solution to making ourselves continue to address enrollment and those numbers.
Anybody else? No. May I have a roll call?
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Thomas August. Aye. Mrs. Munger. Aye. Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mr. Colling.
Aye.
And Mr. Densler.
Aye.
Eight. Item 8D, bid award, new weight room equipment.
Okay, so this is the bid award for the new weight room equipment. Move to award the bid for new weight room equipment for the newly remodeled weight room at Lakeshore High School to Pro Maxima of Houston, Texas, the amount of $134,075. District solicited bids for new weight room equipment. We received bids from 3 different contractors and selected the lowest qualified bidder. Bond funding will be utilized to pay for the project work. Arrival date of the equipment is approximately June or July, and the bid was about $32,000 lower than the next lowest bid. So the recommendation is move to award the bid to Pro Maxima.
Motion to accept.
So moved.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Collins, supported by Mrs. DeLong. Are there any questions?
I just have to point out that one of the bidders named their company Strengthio, and if they would like some English tutoring, I think we have some teachers that might be able to help them come up with something other than Strengthio. And because we didn't award it to Strengthio, I just wanted to get that word on the record, because it made me giggle. And I'm done.
Anybody else have a question?
Was that a question?
Like contents inside the weight room, no structural changes, no.
Correct.
Correct.
As Josh was saying, there was quite a difference in the amounts of the bids, and it was spec'd on, the bid was put on the same equipment throughout, but we took the lowest bid, which was different equipment.
It was comparable. John Hartley went through the whole, the bidding, all the specifications, all the different machines, and said it was comparable. So we looked at that to make sure.
Equal quality and warranty and,
Yep.
okay. Anybody else? May I have a roll call?
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mrs. Thomas August.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mrs. Munger. Aye. Mr. Densler.
Aye.
Might have been Mr. Collins.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I didn't say you. I'm telling you,
It's about time I get to give it back to you. Okay. That's okay. 8E 2022 MASB Board of Directors election. There's 4 candidates: Madeline Alendi Hines, Darlene Pompano, Angie Smith, and Michael Sawicki. I believe we need to vote for a 3-year term for this. Does anybody have any comments?
I knew people were gonna look at me. I've been really out of the loop with MASB since COVID, so I know very little about these 4 people other than what we've gotten in our packets.
Okay, going through all the resumes, I believe the Melinda Melinda Hines and Darlene Pompano had the best experience in community involvement. So I does anybody have any recommendations on?
I've had some contact with Darlene. I would move to select Darlene, I think it's Pomponio, but I think
Pomponio,
I'm saying it
okay.
correctly, of Southgate Community Schools.
Support.
Okay, motion made by Mrs. Bartle, supported by Mr. Densler to cast our vote for Darlene Pompano. Sorry, killed that one.
Pomponio.
Pomponio, it's just kind of rhymes with Deponio. She is the incumbent, so, and she's been on there for 13 years, I believe, so. Any other comments on this? And can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Thomas August.
Aye.
Mrs. Munger. Aye. Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mr. Colling.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle. Aye. And Mr. Densler.
Aye.
Okay, 9A, board commentary. We'll start with Katie.
Hello. Okay, so at Violet, they had their Kids Heart Challenge, and the Violet community raised over $37,000. And then the 4th and 5th graders are going to Mackinac in the spring, and this is district-wide, not just Violet. And then the social emotional programs with CARE, and the second step presentation for the 2nd and 3rd graders was given. And then they brought back the in-house science with their high-touch, high-tech science. And this is for all grades, not just to any grade. And then there was 50 of 9-year-olds selected to participate in the NAEP testing during February. And this is a national assessment of the education process. So that's pretty cool, I feel like. And then the annual spelling bee was hosted for the 5th graders, and the 6th grade band played at this event. And then for Masonic, they celebrated their 100th day of school, and they did a bunch of cool activities, different in each grade and each classroom. And then March Reading Month starts tomorrow, and they are going to be reading one book a month. And this month, all of the elementary schools are reading the same book. And then NHS visited all the classrooms for Violet, Masonic, and Rogers. And Masonic wanted to put in that they just love our help, and that they love seeing the high school faces as much. And then same with them, Mackinac. I feel like I would definitely love to experience that. I don't remember what school it was. I went to Violet, and I was always jealous that they got to go to Mackinac, and we didn't. Yeah.
And worms here.
You can thank Mrs. Bartle for it.
Yeah. We got him on board.
And then with Rogers, they celebrated their 100th day of school by they celebrated their 100th day of school dressing up, and they posted them on Twitter, and some of them were actually pretty funny. And then the Super Bowl, they did a prediction of who they thought was going to win, and they were right. So, and it's on their Twitter again. It's a picture, and there's a bunch of little Rams, and then I don't even know what the other team was. I slept during the Super Bowl. And then they visited the senior living home on Jefferson, and they dressed up as elders, and it was pretty funny. And that was 1st grade. Kennedy, they had girls had their last basketball game today, and the 7th grade girls only had one loss this year, and I'm not sure if they won or not today, but if they won, then they would be league champs ever since 2013. And then they had a spelling bee with the 8th graders, and the winner of that was Lillian Wallace. So congratulations. And then she is now studying for the Macomb area competition, so wish her luck on that. And then spring sports are starting to get going, so excited. I know their wrestling team has up to 40 members this year, so that's pretty big. And lots of trips planned. Band and choir have trips planned to Chicago at the end of March. Sixth grade camp will be going on at the end of March. Eighth graders will be heading to Washington at the end of March. And Miss Golf, and I'm sorry if I pronounced this name wrong, but Miss Demachowski are publishing a children's book at March 22nd. And then for Lakeshore, we have our Glow coming up, and it's relatively the same as a snow coming. We have black lights instead, and we got cool like glow sticks. And that will be this Saturday. And then we have camp counselors. You can be a camp counselor for the sixth grade camp, and I'm pretty excited for that. I'm hoping I get one. And then we had 3 bowlers make it to states this year: Sarah Showers, Emily Spear, Ben Zeffin.
We actually had 5.
5.
2 girls, 2 boys.
Who's
Feeling my thunder here.
Keep going, you're doing great.
It was great.
4. You guys had 5?
We have 5. Zephin Lazar, Ben Augustitis, Sarah Showers, Emily Spear, and Coach Greg's daughter, Ashley Villacerta.
I forgot Ben.
Huh?
I forgot Ben.
Forget Ben.
Yeah, I don't know. It's my golf buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Thank you, Katie. It's nice to see the kids going on field trips again.
Yes.
I just wish they'd take me as a chaperone.
That's what I'm hoping for 6th grade camp.
Mrs. Amy Thomas August.
I'm just looking forward to Wednesday's virtual open house. It'll be interesting to see how it's done, and I'm glad that you mentioned that at 5:30 the choir will be performing, so I'll definitely log on before that. Tomorrow is the first day of March, and as a teacher myself, I just cannot wait to see what all the elementaries have planned for March's Reading Month. It's such a great month. I extended an invitation to the elementary schools to be a guest reader, and so I have some teachers who have responded to me. I look forward to coming to the classrooms to be a guest reader. And it's just a great way for kids to kind of renew their love of literature. And I don't know if you could tell us what book they chose to read this year.
That's right.
Oh, it's under wraps, okay.
I am not going to be the spoiler.
I was worried Katie was going to say something. It's like a big thing.
I would follow the socials.
I will have to tomorrow, yes. And
Can't reveal that early.
And this can't be done without the support of the staff who spend extra hours doing things in the building, decorating hallways, coming up with activities, and I just wanted to give my gratitude for them for making sure March's Reading Month is celebrated. So, that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Dan Kelly.
So I want to start by just recognizing Administrators Week. Thank you to all of our administrators for all the hard work and effort that you put into your roles. Obviously, we couldn't have the district that we do without you and the work that you do. So it doesn't go unnoticed or unappreciated. So thank you. Quick update from the foundation. There were 3 grants this month. Good to see more rolling in. Lately. There's 2 for Rogers, 1 for the PE class for a drum fit, which you might remember a couple years ago, I believe. One went to, I think, Masonic, maybe? Yeah, got that right. Both of the other elementaries, so now all 3 have a drum fit program, which is very cool. Rogers for the MOSI class, there's several sensory items, different role-playing and social type skills to promote motor skills and development in those students. And then the adult ed program had a grant for some additional technology support. That's all I really had, but I did want to also thank everyone that came and spoke with us during public commentary today, especially you, Mr. Old, you and your family, everything that you're doing, putting the time and effort into creating a scholarship to memorialize what sounds like an amazing and incredible person. is just fantastic. We say this a lot, but it's a testament to the community that we have, that you would put the time in to do something like that for our students, and can't wait to see how the foundation grows and supports those moving forward. So thank you for bringing some really great positive news to us today. Appreciate it.
Mrs. Liz Munker.
Well, Katie, I have been to Mackinac, and I will rub it in because it is a wonderful trip. Sorry, Josh. I always like to highlight the Slurpee Awards because they highlight things that the school doesn't just teach English, math, science. It teaches life skills of gratitude, kindness, teamwork, integrity, creativity, being respectful, being responsible, and having social intelligence, which was an older award given, but that's important, I think, to everyone in life. So, you know, we're what do you say, Joe? The first world kids. We're teaching the kids, you know, world class kids. Yes, in a world class environment, taught by world class teachers. That's what we do here at Lakeshore. I too wanted to say a shout out to the Olds. I've known Joe, and I sat with Beth on the benches at swim meets, and she definitely was one for strong character. And so I welcome this new award, and thank you very much for that. And that's all I have. Oh, happy Easter. I don't think we'll meet until after.
No, Easter's not till April.
Oh, it's April. Oh my gosh, yeah. All right, one more.
March went by quick.
Yeah, it's March is my birthday month, so it's my whole month. So, but
Just work that in there.
yeah. So, all right, not happy Easter, not yet. So, thank you.
Mr. Gensler.
Alrighty, I don't have a lot, largely because it's past my bedtime. But just want to, welcome all of our new staff, continue to, thank just the incredible amount of work and dedication that our teachers, our support staff, our food service workers, our administrators, everyone, keeps putting in. We got a lot of great things coming up. Tomorrow's Fat Tuesday, or as I like to call it, Tuesday. And that's what I leave you with, is that really bad joke. So, have a good night.
Thank you, Josh. Mrs. Bartle.
There we go.
I'm on a roll.
You are in rare form tonight.
Marriage does do it.
He's married and happy.
That was Hawaii and the honeymoon.
I'm still riding my way.
I just want to elaborate a little bit on Katie's comments about wrestling, and tie it in a little bit to you, Joseph. We do a lot of things up here as board members and as administrators, but getting kids to participate in extracurricular activities, whether it be athletics or other choices, is very important to academics. So, what you're doing in sponsoring a scholarship is fantastic encouragement. It's obviously a great honor and memory. But we really want our kids to participate. We want them to participate in something. We want them to feel like they belong here, because they do belong here. I understand that the wrestling team has actually been in a kind of a growing and rebuilding phase. And this year, they've had a little bit, I'm just going to elaborate a little bit more on the success that was shared with me. So they've now had back-to-back districts, first time in regional since 2004. 8 individuals qualified to be in regionals, and Isabel Worf qualified for states in the girls category, which I didn't even realize that there was a girls category for wrestling. So I just think that is really cool. It's cool that we have more and more kids wanting to participate. Success in a program encourages kids to want to participate, but so do a lot of other, all these little bits and pieces of the puzzle where we have staff, teachers, board members, administrators, everybody encouraging kids to participate in something and try things. They don't have to be the next Olympian. They just need to give something a shot, find some joy in it, or maybe rule it out and move on to the next thing. That's okay. That's life, and there's no better time to do that than in their school year. So, it's always nice to report on the big successes. I'd rather be reporting on sheer numbers of just saying we had 100 kids in band and now we have 102. Whatever it is, small steps as we keep bringing kids into the realm of all the activities that are offered here. So anyway, congratulations to the wrestlers and the wrestling team and the individuals, and thank you for, bringing another opportunity to our kids. Thank you.
Mrs. DeLong.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I too had noticed on Facebook, I saw when they went to the American House Lakeshore Senior Living. That place, it holds a special place in my heart because that's where my mom and my sister had lived prior to my mom's passing. It was nice to see the photos. I still know some of the residents there. One of the students that was in the picture is one of our bowlers, Peyton Lees. He was there, and I talked to him at bowling, and he said he really enjoyed it. Just talking with the older individuals, and I've often mentioned this to Dr. DePonio, I just want to somehow integrate our students with them. They're a great bunch of people over there having the band go over there and perform, or the choir perform for them. They love that kind of stuff there. I know that. So I think that's really great because, yeah, they may be older individuals, but they still matter, and they get bored over there, playing bingo all the time, believe me. So I think that's great. And in bowling, as Katie had mentioned about the individual qualifiers, we did have our teams qualified. The girls are back-to-back regional champions. Our boys came in third. It was a little bit sketchy after the first game. Coach Jim was asking for 5 new bowlers because they bowled a 101. So, but they managed to pull it out, and they came in third. So we are going to states this weekend at Super Bowl in Canton. Team event is Friday, and singles is Saturday, so we're very pumped and really looking forward to that. Joe, and you know just how exciting we all get about the bowling. With that, I think what you're doing in honor of Beth is great. For those of you that may not have known Beth, she was a go-getter. She was like my right hand at bowling. I would walk in, she took everything from me. What do you need? She was there. She was great. Actually, Tom Stockton, if you recall him, was asking where she was recently because she was the best 50-50 collector there was. She did not take no for an answer. If it was $5 and you gave her 10, she goes, okay, I'll take the 10. And that's what she got. So she was great. She would be very proud of all of you and what you're doing. I was sorry I missed the fundraiser, but we had a very early morning tournament the next day. But if it's any other time that is not during bowling season, we would be there. I know you guys miss her dearly, and so do I. But thank you so much for what you're doing for all of our student athletes. So, and thank you, and I hope everybody has a great week.
Easter?
No, not Easter, but if you're bored on Friday or Saturday, come out to Super Bowl and cheer us on.
Okay, I'll start with Mrs. Lankin. Thank you very much for all the data that you prepared for us on the students, and look forward to seeing the achievements and the progress they make coming up. Pete, thank you for preparing all that. I know you only show a little part of that, but we get a whole bunch in our email, so thank you for all that, and the staff working on that. Mr. Old, thank you very much. As I hardly elaborate after what they've said, but I grew up with the Uren family. Shorian. All the way from baseball up. I mean, they were always part of the community, contributed, and just want to thank you and look forward to future endeavors with you. I really hope we're done with this pandemic and we can move on, focus on our students' education and getting back to a structured school day, which all of our students need. They need to count on that structure every day when they come. It's evident in some of the problems we have seen and faced, so hopefully we can move on. Last week, I met with a few board members from other districts, and we talked about the last 2 years of what the teachers have gone through, what their boards have gone through, and after listening to them and telling my story about Lake Shore, they were impressed. And it just shows the hard work and dedication from all the staff and community that has been involved with us for the last couple of years. I know we had a few bumps in the roads and a few problems, but everybody did an outstanding job serving the needs of our students and our community, and it's very proud to be a Shorean. Talking with those people, you realize what we have here and how it's continuing, so thank you, and I think that's all I have. I think Josh wants to leave. Can I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. DeLong, supported by Mr. Collins. Everybody, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.